The wild Mustang had collapsed in the middle of the road. Everyone thought he was taking his final breath. But then, a mute girl stepped forward. She didn't speak. She didn't even touch him at first. She simply looked into his eyes. And in that moment, something unbelievable happened. The sun hung low over the horizon, spilling gold across the open plains. Heat shimmered off the earth as a wild Mustang thundered across the landscape, his coat glistening with sweat, his mane whipping like a banner of freedom. He moved with the kind of raw, untamed power that made people stop and stare, an animal born for open skies and endless miles. Every stride carried a lifetime of wildness, every breath a reminder that he belonged nowhere and everywhere at once. But freedom has a cost. As the Mustang neared a dusty road that cut through the plains, his steps began to falter. His powerful muscles trembled beneath him. His breathing came faster, deeper, harsher. A few travelers in passing cars slowed down, watching him with curiosity that slowly shifted into concern. The Mustang took one final staggering step onto the road, and then his legs buckled. The mighty animal collapsed in a cloud of dust. People gasped. Cars screeched to a halt. Doors slammed as locals and travelers jumped out, unsure whether they were witnessing a tragedy or a danger. Someone shouted, "Stay back. He's wild." Another yelled, "He's dying. We have to do something." But the shouts overlapped with fear and hesitation. Some took a step forward, then reconsidered and stepped back. Others argued about what to do, pointing, whispering, panicking. The horse lay on his side, chest rising and falling unevenly, each breath sounding like it might be his last. Foam lined his mouth. His eyes fluttered, rolling back with exhaustion and pain. Dust coated his coat, turning the once proud creature into a broken silhouette on the road. The tension grew thick. People crowded closer, but didn't dare to truly approach. Parents pulled their children behind them. A man tried calling animal rescue, shaking as he spoke. A woman covered her mouth, whispering prayers under her breath. Everyone felt the weight of the moment, watching a creature so majestic brought to the edge of life. And yet, in the crowd's chaos, one figure stood completely still. A small girl, no older than 11, stood near the back. She didn't push forward. She didn't shout. She didn't even react to the noise around her. Her head tilted slightly, eyes locked on the Mustang with a strange calmness, almost as if she could feel what he felt. Nobody noticed her at first, while adults argued, took videos, and tried to control their fear. She simply watched, silent, steady, separate from the panic that surrounded her. Someone tugged her sleeve, whispering, "Sweetheart, stay away. It's dangerous." But she didn't respond. Not because she didn't hear, because she couldn't speak. Words weren't part of her world, and noise had never been her language. Her silence became a powerful contrast against the confusion around her. She didn't flinch at the horse's labored breathing. She didn't panic at his size or his pain. Instead, she stepped to the side to get a clearer view. Her eyes soft but focused, like she understood something others didn't. People kept shouting over each other, debating whether to approach the animal or wait for help. But through all the noise, the girl remained the only one who seemed calm, purposeful, almost drawn to the dying Mustang, as if an invisible thread connected them. Then, without warning, she began to move. Her footsteps were slow and deliberate, her small shoes crunching lightly on the gravel. The crowd went silent for a moment, confused by her boldness. Someone tried to call her back, but she didn't stop. She walked with a gentle determination, her eyes never leaving the fallen horse. And as she stepped out from the circle of onlookers and into the dusty road, everyone watched in stunned silence as the mute girl approached the dying Mustang, drawn by something far deeper than fear. She moved toward the fallen Mustang with small, steady steps, her expression calm in a way no child should be in a moment like this. To most people there, she looked fragile, thin arms, quiet face, clothes covered in dust. But those who knew her would say different. They'd say she was stronger in silence than most adults were with 1,000 words. Her name was Eilina. She hadn't spoken a single word since the day she was born. Doctors had names for it, long explanations filled with terms and theories. But her mother always said something simpler. Eilina doesn't speak because she listens to the world the way we don't. And for as long as anyone could remember, animals listened back. While other children played loudly, Eilina would sit under trees with stray cats curled beside her. Lost dogs would follow her home, even the fearful ones no one could touch. Even wounded birds, trembling and panicked, seemed to soften when she held them. It was as if she had a language that didn't need sound, one made of stillness, gentleness, and presence. And now, that same quiet strength carried her toward a dying mustang. A man reached out to stop her. Hey, don't go near him. He's wild. A woman backed away, adding, he could kick. Sweetheart, stop. But Eilina kept walking. Their warnings washed over her like distant echoes. Her world wasn't made of noise or fear, it was made of what she could feel. And right now, she felt the mustang's pain like a pressure in her chest. When she finally reached him, she crouched down slowly, her knees brushing the dirt. The mustang's breaths came in sharp, ragged jolts. His body twitched with pain. His eyes flickered open, glassy, unfocused, wild. And then they found hers. The world stilled. It wasn't just eye contact. It was something deeper, a quiet exchange that felt almost unreal. His frantic breathing slowed just enough for him to really see her. This tiny figure kneeling inches from his massive head. Dust swirled around them. The wind paused. Even the crowd seemed to forget itself. In his eyes she saw fear, raw and ancient. She saw exhaustion heavy like chains. She saw surrender. The kind that comes when a creature knows it has nothing left to fight with. But beneath all of that, she saw trust. A small, fragile spark of trust, given without reason. And the mustang, staring into her soft, steady gaze, saw something too. He didn't understand words, but he understood presence, and hers felt safe. Like shade in the desert heat. Like water to a thirsty heart. He could sense she meant no harm, no threat. Her silence wasn't empty. It was comforting. Slowly, the tension in the horse's muscles loosened. His breathing, though still shallow, began to find a rhythm. The trembles in his hoofs lessened. The panic in his eyes softened into something that looked almost peaceful. The crowd noticed the change. A few people gasped softly. One whispered, "What? What's happening?" Another muttered, "He's calming down." Because of her, murmurs replaced fear. Cameras lowered. People leaned in, mesmerized by the strange, beautiful connection unfolding in front of them. Eilina lifted one hand, small, shaking slightly, but full of courage. She reached out slowly, giving the mustang every chance to pull away. He didn't. Instead, he exhaled through his nose, a warm, shaky breath brushing against her skin. And at that moment, as if sealing an unspoken pact between them, Eilina placed her hand gently on the side of his face. The mustang closed his eyes, and the whole world seemed to breathe with him. Eilina kept her hand on the mustang's face for a long, quiet moment, grounding him with nothing but her presence. Then she pulled back slightly and glanced around at the crowd, her eyes sharp, focused, purposeful. She lifted both hands, gesturing quickly toward the people nearest her. First, she pointed to a man holding a bottle of water. Then she made a pouring motion, tapping the ground beside the horse. The man blinked, confused, until someone beside him whispered, "She wants the water." For him, "Bring it." He hurried forward. Next, Eilina gestured to a woman with a scarf, mimicking the motion of placing something over the mustang's body, shade, cover, protection from the heat. The woman, startled by how clearly she understood, rushed to her car and grabbed a tarp instead. Then Eilina pointed at two younger boys standing by an open truck, miming tying and pulling ropes to stabilize the horse if he moved. The boys exchanged looks, unsure but willing, and ran off to find some. Without a voice, she was commanding the rescue. People followed her gestures not because they fully understood everything, but because something about the way she moved told them she did. As supplies came forward, Eileen worked quickly. She poured small amounts of water onto the Mustang's dry lips, careful not to overwhelm him. She used a cloth to wipe sweat and dust from his eyes. She shaded his body with the tarp, reducing the sun's merciless heat. Every movement was gentle, deliberate, respectful. A few of the older men murmured among themselves, "How does she know what to do? She's just a kid. No, look at her. She's helping him." The Mustang tried to lift his head, trembling with the effort, but the weight of dehydration dragged him back down. His hooves scraped weakly against the ground. His chest heaved. Then, in a sudden surge of desperation, he tried to stand. The crowd gasped. A few screamed. Eileen jumped back instinctively, but only for a heartbeat. The Mustang staggered halfway up, legs shaking violently under him, and then collapsed again with a heavy thud that sent dust flying. Someone shouted, "He's dying." Another cried out, "Move away. It's too dangerous." But Eileen did the opposite. She stepped right back to his side. She placed her hand on his muzzle again, pressing gently but firmly, and whispered nothing, only offering steady presence. Her breathing synced with his in slow, intentional patterns, as if urging him to follow. She saw the signs plainly, his skin hot to the touch, his breath shallow, his pulse faint, heat stroke, severe dehydration, shock. She had seen animals in this state before, strays, farm animals, even birds. She recognized the terrible stillness that came right before the body gave up. People on the sidelines, once frantic, began to watch her closely, trusting her instincts even though she spoke no words. Every gesture she made, someone responded. Every silent plea she gave, someone filled. Then it happened. A horrible, heart-stopping moment. The horse's chest rose and didn't fall again. 1 second. 2 seconds. 3. Too long. Is he? Someone whispered. "Oh God." Another cried. The Mustang lay completely still. Alina's breath caught in her throat. She didn't cry, didn't scream. She simply dropped to her knees beside him and pressed both hands to his chest, right where his heartbeat should have been strong and loud. Her fingers trembled. Her eyes filled with fierce determination. She leaned close, her forehead touching his warm coat, her hands moving in tiny, rhythmic motions, not pushing, not forcing, but urging. "Live. Don't stop. I'm here." It was a message she sent without sound, without words, only through the quiet force of her will. For a terrifying moment, nothing happened. Then, suddenly, a shudder passed through the Mustang's body. His chest rose sharply. Air rushed back into his lungs in a ragged gasp. His legs twitched. His ears flicked weakly. His nostrils flared with a desperate breath. People cried out in astonishment. Some covered their mouths, others clapped, others whispered prayers of thanks. But everyone saw the same thing. The horse had started breathing again. The moment she touched him, a hush fell over the road, deeper than before. The crowd stared at the mute girl, not with pity, not with confusion, but with awe. Her silence was not a weakness. It was the very thing that saved him. Within minutes of the Mustang breathing again, people rushed into motion with a new sense of purpose. Someone shouted that there was a small farm nearby. Another person sprinted to get a flatbed cart usually used for hay. Within 15 minutes, a truck rolled up with the cart hitched behind it. Everyone worked together, carefully lifting, guiding, and steadying the Mustang as they slid him onto the padded surface. But Eileen never left his side. When the cart began to move, she walked beside it, one hand resting gently on the horse's neck as if her touch alone kept him grounded. At the farm, they laid him under a large shelter, away from the harsh sun. The Mustang's body rose and fell in slow, uneven breaths, and though adults tried to suggest she rest, Eileen simply shook her head. She knelt beside him and stayed minutes, then hours. She worked the way only someone who knew animals would. She cleaned dried blood from small cuts along his legs. She rinsed the dust from his eyes with water cupped carefully in her palms. She soaked cloth in cool water and pressed it gently against his overheated skin. She held a bucket close enough for him to drink. When he found the strength to lift his muzzle, he responded to her touch more than anyone else's. As the hours passed, the Mustang began to stir. His eyelids fluttered, his nostrils twitched, and slowly, very slowly, he lifted his head. His gaze wandered at first, confused and unfocused, but then his eyes found her. Recognition, relief. A soft rumble rose in his throat, something between a breath and a sound. The horse stretched his neck weakly toward her, brushing his nose against her hand. It wasn't just acknowledgement, it was trust, returning as steadily as his strength. From that moment on, he wouldn't let anyone else near without her presence. Whenever someone approached with medicine, water, or cloth, he kept one eye locked on Ailina. If she was calm, he stayed calm. If she stepped away even a few feet, he tried to lift his head to follow her. The connection between them grew deeper with every passing minute. Then came the moment everyone held their breath for. The Mustang shifted his weight. His hooves scraped against the ground. His muscles trembled as he pushed himself upward. He made one attempt, faltered, then tried again, wobbling, shaking, fighting gravity inch by inch. Ailina stood right in front of him, palms out, encouraging him without a sound. With one final, determined surge, the Mustang rose to his feet, unsteady but standing, alive. People watching from the barn doorway gasped, then broke into applause and quiet cries. They knew, every single one of them, that the horse's recovery was not a miracle of medicine. It was her. Later, as the adrenaline settled, Alina's father arrived. He knelt beside her, brushing dust from her hair, relief flooding his face. When someone asked how she managed to calm a wild horse like that, he smiled softly. "She's been like this since she was little," he said. "Animals, they understand her in ways people don't. She doesn't need words. They feel her heart." And looking at the Mustang leaning gently toward her, it was impossible to doubt him. The Mustang stood on trembling legs, his breaths deep but steady, the strength returning to his body little by little. Dust drifted from his coat as he shook himself gently. And the moment his eyes found Ailina standing nearby, something softened inside him. With slow, cautious steps, he moved toward her until his massive head lowered beside her shoulder. Then he nudged her softly, carefully, as though saying thank you in the only language he knew. Ailina didn't speak, but her smile said everything. People who had gathered around the barn fence wiped their eyes. Some clapped, some filmed with shaky hands, and others simply stared in disbelief at the sight of a wild Mustang showing affection to a silent little girl. They'd never seen anything like it. Just hours ago, they believed the horse was seconds from death. Now he stood alive because of her. By afternoon, the story had spread through the entire town. Someone posted a video online, and local news vans pulled into the farm one by one. Reporters whispered excitedly, trying not to disturb the horse as they filmed. Their headlines flashed: "Mute girl saves dying wild horse. A silent miracle on the road." People who once overlooked Ailina, who assumed her silence meant weakness, now watched her with a new kind of respect. No one saw a quiet, awkward child anymore. They saw someone brave, gentle, and extraordinary. For the first time in her life, people approached her not with pity or confusion, but with admiration. As the sun began to dip toward the horizon again, painting the sky with warm colors, the Mustang stepped forward. Stronger now, no longer swaying. He moved beside Ailina and walked with her across the open field. His steps were slow, careful, almost as if he wanted to memorize the rhythm of walking next to her. When they reached the edge of the plains, she paused. The wind brushed her hair as she turned to face him. She lifted her hand one final time, placing it gently against his face. The Mustang closed his eyes and leaned into the touch, breathing her in, remembering her scent, her calmness, her silent strength. Then, with a soft snort, he stepped back. He looked at her once, twice. Then he turned and took off. His muscles gathered beneath him like coiled springs, and he broke into a powerful gallop across the stretching land. Dust rose behind him as he ran, faster and stronger with each stride. Just before disappearing over a small ridge, he stopped, turned his head, and looked back at her one last acknowledgement. Then he vanished into the wild where he belonged. The crowd behind Eilina stood in awe, quiet in a way that honored the moment. No words were needed. They had witnessed something rare, something that didn't require language to be understood. Sometimes empathy speaks louder than voices. Sometimes silence carries more meaning than words. And sometimes the quietest people, the ones who go unnoticed. Unheard, are the ones who create the loudest miracles. Eilina watched the horizon where the Mustang disappeared. She didn't wave. She didn't cry. She simply smiled, knowing she had changed a life, and knowing deep inside that he had changed hers too.